Welcome to Free You. In today's world, life moves faster than ever. We wake up to notifications, rush through endless tasks, and measure our worth by how much we produce. Technology brings comfort, convenience, and entertainment at our fingertips. And yet, have you noticed? A quiet ache lingers within, a subtle weariness, an inner void that whispers, even after all achievements. Something essential is still missing. Have you ever asked yourself why, in an age of abundance, so many of us still feel restless, drained, or hollow inside? This inner void rarely announces itself loudly. It slips in quietly, through late nights of scrolling, conversations that feel shallow, or work that consumes time, but not the heart. We often label it burnout, depression, or lack of motivation. But could it be something deeper? From an energetic perspective, human beings are not machines. We are living fields of vibration. When energy aligns with truth, it flows. When it is forced into roles that betray our essence, it withdraws. That heaviness in the body, that fog in the mind, that silence in the heart, are these really laziness, or are they the soul whispering, "This path does not feed me"? And here lies the paradox. The inner void is not failure. It is a message, a doorway, not the absence of meaning, but the call to deeper meaning. From the wisdom of prajna, we see that every state is impermanent. This weariness, too, is impermanent. It comes to guide us, not to define us. So let us pause with this question. Why is it that in an age of comfort and convenience, humanity feels more restless, more bored, and more hollow inside than ever before? When people say, "I feel empty inside," they rarely mean that nothing is happening within. The psyche is never silent. What they truly mean is that life energy is no longer flowing in a way that nourishes them. Imagine a river. If it flows freely, it carries vitality, sound, and movement. But if it is blocked, the water does not vanish. It hides, it stagnates, it waits. The same is true of our inner life. Energy never disappears. It retreats, waiting for alignment. That retreat is what we experience as the inner void. Every human being carries an inner compass, subtle yet precise. This compass quietly points toward what gives true vitality. When we follow it, energy flows. When we betray it, energy withdraws. You may still perform your duties, wake up, go to work, fulfill expectations, yet underneath, you feel heavy, uninspired, disconnected. The body resists, the heart grows flat, the mind refuses to cooperate. This is not laziness. It is the soul refusing to waste its precious current on what does not belong to it. The inner void appears as a reminder. You are moving away from what is real. Seen from this perspective, exhaustion is not a weakness, but a form of protection. It is the organism saying, "I will not let you pour energy into what starves your heart." Modern language calls it burnout, procrastination, even self-sabotage. But in truth, it is wisdom. It is the inner system resisting falseness. When you collapse into the couch, unable to push forward, it may not mean you have failed. It may mean your deeper self is demanding a pause. And in that pause lies the possibility of listening. Yet society does not honor this inner refusal. From childhood, we are trained to override it. Productivity is praised. Stillness is punished. If you hesitate, you are lazy. If you rest, you are shamed. This pressure forces us to spend energy even after the soul has withdrawn its consent. The result is hollowness. We keep moving, but each step feels meaningless. This is why many high achievers, those who seem successful on the outside, privately confess that they feel nothing on the inside. Their lives are full, but their hearts are barren. The void here is not emptiness. It is a silent protest against living in falseness. The second root of the inner void is scattering. In our digital age, attention is pulled in 100 directions at once. Notifications, headlines, advertisements, endless videos, all demand a slice of awareness. Energy follows attention. When attention is fragmented, energy fragments. Like current leaking through too many wires, the charge weakens. The light flickers. The power never gathers into strength. We may spend hours consuming content, yet instead of feeling satisfied, we feel strangely drained. The nervous system is overstimulated, while the soul remains unfed. Modern culture confuses stimulation with vitality. Just because the senses are excited does not mean the soul is fed. Scrolling endlessly can keep the eyes busy, but leaves the heart starving. Achieving more can fill the calendar, but leaves the spirit thirsty. This is the paradox of our time: abundance of options, scarcity of depth. When energy is dispersed into countless fragments, it never returns to the center. The inner void is the echo of that dispersion, the silence left behind when nothing truly touches us. What we mistake as boredom may actually be a call for depth, a reminder that stimulation cannot replace nourishment. The third root of the inner void is disconnection from prajna, the clear ground of awareness. When life is ruled only by ego, everything becomes measurement. Am I good enough? Do I have what they have? Am I ahead or behind? The ego thrives on comparison, but comparison never ends. It is an endless treadmill, draining energy without pause. As long as we are running on it, energy cannot return home. It spins outward in striving and anxiety, but never circles back to nourish the heart. Prajna reminds us, awareness itself is the root. When we forget this and identify only with the restless ego, we lose that root. We become like a tree planted in shallow soil. The branches may stretch, but the sap dries out. Weariness, boredom, and inner hollowness are the tree's cry for deeper ground. They are the soul's way of saying, you have drifted from the source. Come back to the root of being. This is why spiritual traditions across cultures teach silence, prayer, meditation, not as escape, but as reconnection. They point us not to distraction, but to depth, the living ground where energy flows again. When seen through energy and prajna, the inner void is not punishment, it is direction. It points us back to alignment, depth, and truth. Each wave of boredom whispers, you are scattering. Each moment of fatigue says, you are misaligned. Each ache of hollowness reveals, you have drifted from the root. In this way, what feels meaningless becomes deeply meaningful. The psyche is not against us, it is guiding us back to life. Most of us try to escape the void. We numb ourselves with entertainment, busyness, or endless distraction. But escape does not work. The void remains, waiting to be faced. And when we dare to face it, something changes. The hollowness becomes less frightening, less hostile. It begins to feel like a doorway, a passage back to what is real. This is the invitation of prajna, to see clearly that the void is not a dead end, but a guidepost. It is not here to destroy us, but to redirect us. It is the silence before truth returns. Facing the void is therefore not failure. It is the first step into alignment, the beginning of clarity. So what does the inner void ask of us? First, honesty. To admit where we are living against ourselves. To see where our energy has refused to flow because the path is false. Second, simplicity, to stop scattering into countless fragments, to choose fewer inputs, fewer roles, fewer masks, so that our energy can gather again. Third, presence, to return to the ground of being, where prajna shines. Awareness itself restores energy, because awareness reconnects us to life as it truly is. And so the real question is not, how do I fix this hollowness? The deeper question is, what is it teaching me? Is it showing that I am forcing my life force into the wrong direction? Is it showing that I am scattering my energy into fragments? Is it showing that I have disconnected from awareness itself? Only by listening can we know. And once we listen, the inner void transforms. It ceases to be a burden and becomes a teacher, a guide, a compass, back to the living stream of energy within. What was once feared as emptiness becomes a profound ally on the path of truth. Many first encounter the inner void in the workplace. Tasks are completed, deadlines are met, promotions are achieved, and yet something inside remains untouched. The hours are full, but the soul is empty. This is the paradox of modern labor, endless doing without deep being. You may sit at a desk 8 hours a day, your body present, but your heart absent. Each achievement, once reached, fades quickly, leaving behind the quiet question, is this all? Burnout does not come only from working too hard, it comes from working without meaning. When energy is poured into tasks that do not nourish the spirit, the result is hollowness, no matter how much success appears on the outside. This is why so many professionals, admired for their productivity, quietly confess that they feel nothing inside. The outer life is full, but the inner current has dried. The void here does not signal laziness, it signals misalignment. It reveals that labor without love, without connection to essence, cannot sustain the soul. What we call success may be only a mask, covering the deeper truth. Vitality cannot survive in soil where meaning is absent. The inner void also shows itself in our relationships. Two people can share a house, a bed, even a life, yet still feel oceans apart. Words are exchanged, but presence is missing. There are dinners eaten side by side, phones glowing between them, silence heavier than any argument. This is the loneliness of being unseen. The body is not isolated, but the heart is. When connection lacks depth, the soul hungers. Affection without attention becomes empty ritual. Conversations without sincerity become noise. The void here is not caused by solitude, but by a lack of true meeting, where two souls open honestly to one another. Without this openness, relationships can become a performance, a daily exchange of roles rather than a communion of beings. Over time, this hollowness corrodes intimacy. What once felt alive becomes routine. What once felt sacred becomes dull. The heart longs not for more words, but for words that carry soul. It longs not for more touch, but for touch filled with awareness. Only presence satisfies the hunger for connection. Without it, the void appears, whispering, "You are close in body, but far in spirit." Even when physically alone, the void can feel loud. You may sit in a room filled with comfort and still feel restless, unable to be at peace with yourself. This is why many avoid silence. The inner void echoes too strongly. And yet, solitude itself is not the problem. It is the quality of that solitude. If we are disconnected from our essence, being alone feels like abandonment. Thoughts attack, comparisons arise, judgments multiply. Time stretches heavy, like a weight pressing on the chest. But if we are rooted in awareness, solitude transforms into nourishment. The same silence that once felt heavy becomes spacious, alive, and healing. It becomes the soil where the heart can rest and the spirit can breathe. In solitude with presence, we discover that we are not truly alone. We meet the deeper self that has always been waiting. The void manifests when solitude is filled with self-judgment and comparison, instead of presence and compassion. It is not the absence of people that hurts, but the absence of connection to one's own being. Solitude, when entered with awareness, dissolves the void and becomes a sanctuary. Perhaps nowhere is the inner void more visible than in digital life. Hours vanish in scrolling. Content floods the senses, yet nothing truly satisfies. We chase the next clip, the next post, the next notification, like drinking salt water that only deepens thirst. The nervous system is overstimulated, but the soul is starved. After long sessions online, people often confess to feeling drained, even though they did nothing. But this is not nothing. It is energy leaking into fragments, scattered across pixels and screens. The void here is not the absence of activity, it is the absence of depth in that activity. We mistake stimulation for nourishment, speed for vitality, novelty for meaning. Yet stimulation without depth leaves the heart empty. Digital life offers endless fragments, but rarely wholeness. It keeps the eyes busy, the fingers moving, the mind restless, while the soul waits, untouched. In this landscape, the void grows louder, not quieter. It tells us, you are consuming without being fed. You are connected to everything, but grounded in nothing. Technology is not the enemy. The enemy is scattering, the endless dispersal of attention that prevents energy from gathering at the center. The modern world has made material abundance more accessible than ever. We can order food with a click, purchase luxuries with a swipe, and surround ourselves with comfort. And yet, many who have everything feel a gnawing hollowness inside. Possessions fill space, but not spirit. Consumption may entertain, but it cannot truly nourish. The void appears when we mistake accumulation for fulfillment. What the heart longs for cannot be bought, meaning, connection, presence, love. Without these, abundance turns into a gilded cage, leaving the soul restless, pacing within. This is why wealth does not guarantee peace, and luxury does not guarantee joy. Material comfort may silence physical hunger, but it cannot silence the hunger for truth. That hunger is spiritual and energetic. It demands depth, not more objects. Without meaning, abundance becomes another mask, a shining surface hiding a hollow core. The void here is not poverty, but excess without essence. It asks, what is all this for? Does it feed your life force or merely decorate your emptiness? In this question lies the beginning of wisdom, the reminder that true nourishment is always inner before it is outer. Young people today face unprecedented opportunities. The world offers endless paths, careers, lifestyles, identities. Yet instead of freedom, many feel paralyzed. Too many choices create scattering. The compass spins wildly, unable to settle. This is why so many young souls confess, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. The void here is not from lack of options, but from lack of grounding. Without inner anchoring, the sea of possibilities overwhelms. Identity becomes a costume that shifts with trends, rather than a root that grows from within. Confusion, indecision, and restless searching reveal that the deeper compass has not been consulted. Energy scatters outward, chasing possibilities, but never returns inward to find essence. The result is a generation overstimulated, yet undernourished. The void here is the echo of too many directions pulling at once. It does not ask for more choices, but for depth within choice. It asks for inner anchoring, clarity born not from external approval, but from connection to one's own being. Without that, freedom feels like drowning. With it, freedom becomes true, the capacity to choose paths aligned with the soul. At midlife, the void often returns in sharper form. Many reach the goals they once chased, career, family, stability, yet find themselves strangely dissatisfied. The outer script has been followed, but the inner life feels unscripted. Carl Jung observed that midlife is often when the soul rebels against borrowed roles. The void here says, "You have built a life, but is it your life?" This questioning can feel destabilizing, but it is also sacred. It is the soul demanding authenticity after years of compliance. The crisis of midlife is not merely about age, it is about truth. The soul, weary of masks, begins to call for essence. It no longer tolerates roles that do not fit. It no longer allows energy to be poured into scripts that betray the heart. Though painful, this void is an invitation to authenticity. It urges us to shed what is false, to reclaim what is real. What looks like breakdown may actually be breakthrough. The void at midlife is not here to destroy, it is here to awaken. It is the soul insisting, enough pretending. Live from what is true. Beyond individuals, the inner void has become a collective condition. We live in a culture that glorifies speed, performance, and consumption. The outer shell of life grows thicker, while the inner substance thins. Communities weaken, conversations skim the surface, rituals lose their soul. Many sense this emptiness not only in themselves, but in the very atmosphere of society. It is the fatigue of a culture that has forgotten silence, depth, and presence. We see it in hurried interactions, in public spaces where eyes are glued to screens, in ceremonies performed without heart. The void here is not personal weakness. It is a symptom of an entire system out of balance. A society obsessed with outer growth, but neglectful of inner grounding, cannot sustain vitality. Collective burnout arises when meaning is sacrificed for performance. The void in culture calls for remembering what nourishes us as humans: authentic connection, shared silence, living traditions, presence that touches the soul. Without these, progress feels hollow and abundance feels sterile. The collective void whispers, "We have gained the world, but lost the depth of being." This message, though heavy, is also a chance for cultural renewal. Although painful, the manifestation of the void is not meaningless. It is a signal, a call for transformation. Just as physical hunger points to the need for food, inner hollowness points to the need for alignment. When the void surfaces, it is not there to harm. It is there to awaken. It reveals where energy has been misdirected, where life has grown shallow, where truth has been ignored. Each appearance of weariness or boredom is an invitation. Pause, listen, return. The void shows us where life is asking to be lived more fully. The inner void manifests in work, relationships, solitude, digital life, materialism, and across all stages of human journey. Yet in every case, its message is consistent. You are out of alignment. Come home. This is the moment where prajna, clear seeing, becomes essential. Through it, we realize the void is not an enemy, but a teacher. It does not appear to destroy us, but to point us back to depth, to presence, to truth. And so the question is not how to escape the void, but how to listen to it. For only by listening does the path toward healing and renewed energy open before us. Prajna, often translated as clear seeing or wisdom, is not about adding more thoughts. It is about seeing reality as it is, without distortion. When we look at the inner void through ordinary eyes, we call it failure, weakness, or illness. But through the eyes of prajna, we see differently. We see that the void is not a sign that something is wrong with us. It is a sign that something real is asking to be noticed. Clear seeing transforms judgment into understanding, and what once felt like a burden begins to reveal itself as a gift. Modern culture loves labels. We call ourselves lazy, unmotivated, depressed. These labels feel solid, as if they define us. But prajna shows us that no label can capture the truth of being. Every emotion, every state is impermanent, arising and passing like clouds. The inner void is no exception. It is not who we are. It is a temporary visitor, carrying a message. The problem is not the void itself, but our identification with it. When we believe, I am empty, we become trapped. When we see, emptiness is arising and it will pass, we are free. Prajna reminds us, all phenomena are impermanent. Thoughts shift, moods change, identities dissolve. The weariness you feel today is not eternal. It is a wave moving through you. When you remember this, the heaviness lightens. You stop treating it as a life sentence. Instead, you meet it with curiosity. What is this wave trying to show me before it leaves? Impermanence does not make life meaningless. It makes life precious. It gives every moment, even moments of hollowness, a sacred significance. The teaching of no self, or a natman, is key. The void inside does not belong to a fixed identity called me. It is simply an experience moving through consciousness. When you stop clinging to it as my emptiness, space opens. You can watch it like weather, clouds gathering, clouds dissolving. Prajna reveals that the suffering is not the feeling itself, but the attachment. This is me. This is mine. When that grip softens, the void loses its power to crush. It becomes another wave in the vast ocean of awareness. What once felt unbearable turns into something natural, even gentle, when seen in the light of clear awareness. Prajna invites us not to fight the void, but to listen. Instead of covering it with distractions, we can sit quietly and ask, what truth are you trying to show me? Sometimes the answer is simple. You are tired. Rest. Other times it is deeper. You are betraying your heart. Return to what is real. When approached with fear, the void feels like a monster. When approached with clear seeing, it becomes a messenger. Listening with prajna transforms emptiness into guidance. What seemed like darkness begins to shine with meaning. Each moment of hollowness becomes an opportunity to hear the deeper wisdom of the soul. And here, compassion naturally arises. Clear seeing is never cold. Prajna is paired with tenderness. When we see the inner void clearly, we stop attacking ourselves for feeling it. We stop calling ourselves broken or weak. Instead, we hold ourselves gently, like a parent holding a crying child. The void is not proof of failure. It is proof of sensitivity. It shows that your soul is alive enough to notice when life has lost meaning. With compassion, the void is no longer an enemy. It is a tender signal, asking for care. From the view of prajna, Energy does not flow only when life feels good. Energy also flows when we allow contradictions. You may feel the desire to grow and the fear of leaving safety. You may long for freedom and also crave security. Normally, we call this conflict. But prajna shows that both sides belong. When both are allowed, a new path arises, a path that includes and transcends. The inner void often appears when we collapse into one pole, denying the other. By holding both, we allow life's energy to circulate again. The void is not telling us we are broken. It is showing us that we have excluded a piece of ourselves. Integration brings vitality back. Another aspect of prajna is the courage to face impermanence fully, even death. Much of human exhaustion comes from pretending life is endless. We avoid thinking of death, so life loses its urgency. But when we remember, my days are numbered, suddenly everything glows. A hug, a meal, a sunset, they all become sacred. The inner void softens when we stop pretending we have infinite time. Awareness of impermanence turns hollowness into gratitude and weariness into appreciation. Prajna also cuts through illusion. One of the greatest illusions is living a life that is not ours. When we wear masks for approval, energy retreats. When we betray our truth for safety, the void deepens. Clear seeing exposes this. It asks, whose voice am I obeying? Where am I pretending? The moment you stop lying to yourself, even in small ways, energy begins to return. Authenticity may not make life easier, but it makes life alive. You may still face challenges, but they will carry meaning. The void cannot coexist with truth. When truth is lived, the void dissolves. This does not mean the void will never return, but its voice will change. Instead of suffocating you, it will guide you. Each reappearance is a reminder to stay aligned, to keep choosing what is real. Prajna reveals that vitality is not found in pretending to be who you are not. It is found in the courage to live as you are, without apology. This clarity pierces through layers of illusion, freeing the soul from false scripts. When energy and truth meet, presence flows naturally, and the inner void begins to fade like morning mist. With prajna, the inner void becomes a teacher rather than a curse. It teaches alignment by showing us misalignment. It teaches presence by showing us distraction. It teaches authenticity by showing us pretense. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this void? We ask, what is it teaching me? This shift changes everything. The void is no longer meaningless suffering. It is sacred curriculum. It is the soul's way of calling us back home. And the lessons are not abstract, they are practical. The void reveals where your energy refuses to go because that path is false. It shows where you are scattering into fragments instead of gathering into depth. It points out where you have disconnected from awareness and invites you to return. By learning to see the void as teacher, you step out of resistance and into wisdom. The same heaviness that once crushed now directs you gently toward truth. Clear seeing transforms suffering into guidance, and what once felt like punishment becomes protection. The void is not the end of the path. It is the signpost reminding you of the way back to life. How do we live prajna practically? We pause, we breathe, we notice the hollow feeling without rushing to escape. We say to ourselves, this is weariness arising. This is hollowness appearing. It is not me. It is not permanent. Let me listen. With this gentle acknowledgement, the void begins to loosen. We journal, meditate, or simply sit in silence. We ask quiet questions. Where is my energy refusing to go? What is calling for honesty? What truth am I ignoring? Sometimes the answers come as insights, sometimes as subtle feelings. Either way, we learn to listen with patience. These small acts of clear seeing shift the void from unbearable weight to meaningful message. Instead of fearing silence, we welcome it as the space where answers emerge. Instead of drowning in the void, we learn to float within it. Presence itself is healing. Awareness does not need to fix, it needs only to see. In this way, prajna becomes not a concept, but a living practice. The void is no longer something to escape from. It is a place where wisdom whispers, if we are willing to be still enough to hear it. Finally, prajna shows us that transformation is not about fixing ourselves, but about seeing ourselves. The inner void loses its grip when bathed in awareness. What once felt like a dead end reveals itself as a doorway. What once drained energy now restores it. For in truth, the void was never empty. It was full of hidden meaning, waiting for us to look deeply. When we resist it, it suffocates. When we judge it, it punishes. But when we turn toward it with clear seeing, it softens and opens. Prajna teaches that nothing in experience is wasted. Even pain, even hollowness, can become part of awakening. Each wave of emptiness becomes an invitation to return to the source. The void ceases to be a curse. It becomes a blessing in disguise. It teaches us the humility to pause, the courage to face impermanence, and the honesty to live authentically. With prajna, we stop running, we stop labeling, and we start listening. And in that listening, life begins to flow again. What once felt meaningless becomes profoundly meaningful. The very ground upon which wisdom flowers, quietly, like light emerging at dawn. Clarity alone is not enough. Once we see that the inner void is a messenger, the question becomes, how do I respond? Transformation requires more than insight. It requires practice. Energy is not restored by thinking differently, but by living differently. The path begins not with dramatic changes, but with subtle shifts, slowing down, listening deeply, honoring truth. Transformation happens step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment. The energetic path is less about forcing life into shape and more about aligning with the natural current already waiting to flow. The first step is acceptance. Most of our exhaustion comes not from the void itself, but from fighting it. We call ourselves broken, lazy, unworthy. This self-judgment drains more energy than the void ever could. Instead, we pause and say, this feeling is here. It is not my enemy. It has something to teach. In that acceptance, energy begins to return. Resistance hardens the void. Acceptance softens it. Like water flowing around a stone, acceptance allows life to move again, even in the presence of weariness. The second step is gathering. Much of our vitality is lost not through big events, but through countless leaks, notifications, distractions, obligations we do not mean. Each fragment steals a drop. To gather energy is to reclaim attention. This might mean turning off a device, saying no to unnecessary tasks, or simply breathing and returning awareness to the body. Energy responds to focus. When you gather your attention into one place, your breath, your step, your task, energy begins to concentrate. The void, once scattered, starts to feel whole again. Rest is not laziness. Rest is restoration. But rest in modern culture has been reduced to distraction, scrolling, binging, escaping. True rest is different. It is deliberate, sacred. It may look like lying in silence, walking slowly in nature, or meditating with eyes closed. In true rest, the nervous system recalibrates, the psyche reveals hidden truths, and energy gathers strength. When you honor rest, you honor life itself. The inner void, once resisted, begins to transform into a wellspring of renewal. Rest does not take away your responsibilities. It restores the strength to meet them with clarity and presence. The next practice is to honor contradictions instead of collapsing into one side. You may feel both the desire to grow and the fear of change. Normally, we try to choose, forcing ourselves into action or into retreat. But energy is born from tension. By holding both truths, longing and fear, you create a field where transformation can occur. This is the paradox Jung pointed to. Energy flows between poles. Prajna sees that both sides belong. When you stop suppressing one half of your inner life, the void no longer consumes energy. It generates it. Integration gives you strength that neither pole alone can provide. The void here is not a punishment, but a sign of imbalance. By honoring both sides, you create wholeness. This practice may not feel comfortable, but it is alive. Aliveness always includes complexity, and prajna allows you to hold it without collapse. The void teaches us not to split ourselves, but to embrace ourselves fully. In that embrace, vitality flows again. Tension becomes energy, fear becomes courage, and longing becomes direction. The contradiction dissolves into movement, and the void becomes a source of creation instead of exhaustion. Another practice is to face impermanence. Remembering death is not morbid, it is liberating. Awareness that life is finite fills each moment with intensity. Suddenly, the hug of a loved one is sacred. The taste of a meal is a miracle. Even ordinary steps glow with significance. Facing impermanence transforms the void. Instead of numbness, there is urgency. Instead of fatigue, there is gratitude. Energy returns not because circumstances changed, but because perception did. The void becomes fertile ground, reminding us that every day is precious. What we fear as emptiness is often simply the denial of transience. By remembering that our days are limited, we stop postponing life. We stop waiting for the perfect time and begin to live now. Prajna reminds us that impermanence is not a curse, but the very condition that makes life meaningful. A flower is precious because it fades. A moment is sacred because it will not return. The inner void softens when we embrace this truth. Instead of trying to fill it endlessly, we honor the fleeting nature of existence and discover fullness hidden inside transience itself. Authenticity restores energy faster than any stimulant. When you stop pretending, energy no longer leaks into masks. You may still have responsibilities, but within them, you can live truthfully. Perhaps it means speaking honestly, creating what truly matters, or simply admitting, "This is not my path." The moment you honor your truth, vitality stirs. The void weakens because its purpose, pointing out dishonesty, has been fulfilled. Energy loves authenticity. When you live as yourself, you are no longer drained by maintaining a false role. You may disappoint others, but you no longer betray yourself. This shift does not mean reckless abandon, it means alignment. Alignment between what you feel, what you value, and what you live. When those three unite, vitality flows naturally. The void cannot coexist with authenticity because the void itself arises to protest pretense. Once pretense dissolves, the void has no function. Living authentically is not about being perfect. It is about being real. Even imperfect truth carries more energy than polished illusion. When you honor your inner voice, you step into the current of life itself, and the emptiness that haunted you transforms into strength. The deepest medicine is presence. Presence means returning to the ground of awareness, the space where thoughts, feelings, and voids all arise and pass. This can be practiced through mindfulness of breath, mindful walking, or simply pausing to feel the body. Presence is not about erasing the void. It is about holding it in spacious awareness. When you rest in presence, even the feeling of hollowness is embraced. And in that embrace, transformation happens naturally. The void dissolves into the stillness that was always whole. Presence does not demand solutions. It does not require labels. It offers space, the very thing the void lacked. With space, the heaviness loosens. With awareness, energy begins to flow. Presence is not escape. It is intimacy with what is. The more you return to presence, the more you discover that the void itself is only another passing guest. It cannot define you, because awareness is larger than any state. In presence, you are no longer fighting against emptiness. You are resting in the fullness that contains even emptiness. This shift is quiet but profound. What once felt unbearable becomes entirely natural when held within awareness. Transformation is not separate from daily living. It does not require retreats or radical withdrawal, though those may help. It begins in ordinary moments, saying no to what is false, saying yes to what nourishes, pausing between tasks to breathe, listening to your body before pushing forward, bringing presence into a conversation, into a meal, into a step. Each small act of alignment matters. The void does not vanish in a single breakthrough. It shifts gradually as life itself becomes more truthful, more present, more alive. Transformation through prajna is not about escaping the world, but engaging it differently. It is about pouring energy into what is real and withdrawing it from what is false. It is about living in a way that is sustainable for the soul, not just the body. Daily life becomes the practice ground, and each moment becomes an invitation. Even when the void returns, you meet it differently. You do not collapse. You listen. You do not escape. You align. This practice is not glamorous, but it is steady. And steadiness, over time, builds a foundation where vitality can root deeply. In the end, the energetic path is not about eliminating the void forever. It is about learning to dance with it. The void may return, but each time it does, you meet it differently. You listen instead of resisting. You align instead of betraying yourself. You rest instead of escaping. Slowly, what once felt like emptiness becomes a source of wisdom. What once drained energy now renews it. This is transformation, not by force, but by flow. Energy is never truly lost. It is always waiting to return. The void shows us where we have wandered off path, and prajna shows us how to walk back. Together, they form a rhythm, a cycle of forgetting and remembering, scattering and gathering, losing and returning. The practice is not to avoid the cycle, but to see it clearly and move within it gracefully. This is why transformation is not a single event, but a lifelong path. With prajna as your guide, every appearance of the void becomes less threatening and more instructive. You begin to trust the process. You begin to trust life. And in that trust, the energy you thought was gone flows back again, quiet, steady, alive. We began with a question. Why do so many of us, in an age of comfort and convenience, feel drained, restless, or hollow inside? We have seen that this inner void is not a failure. It is a messenger. It arises when energy is misaligned, scattered, or disconnected from the ground of awareness. Through the lens of prajna, we learned that the void is not a curse, but a compass, pointing us back to alignment, authenticity, and truth. The inner void is never truly empty. Beneath the weariness lies meaning. Beneath the hollowness lies direction. Every time you feel drained, life is whispering, stop, listen, return. This is why prajna calls us to see clearly, without labels or judgment, to recognize that even our heaviest states are impermanent, that what we call emptiness may be the very place where new life is gathering. In this light, the void is not something to fear. It is a doorway, inviting us to live more deeply. Transformation does not come in one grand moment. It comes quietly, in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you honor rest instead of resisting it, in the way you choose truth over pretense. Each small act of alignment restores energy. Each moment of presence heals a fragment of the void. Over time, these choices reshape your inner life. The river that once felt blocked begins to flow again. What felt like hollowness becomes vitality. Transformation is less about fixing and more about listening, less about rushing forward and more about allowing life's current to move freely once more. In each pause, in each breath, you rediscover that what you were seeking was never outside. It was waiting quietly within. And as you learn to trust these moments, the path of return becomes clear. The void is no longer a wall, but a gentle opening into wholeness. So the next time you feel that quiet ache inside, do not rush to escape. Do not drown it in noise or numb it with distraction. Instead, pause. Place a hand on your heart and listen. Ask, what truth is this void asking me to hear? And trust that within the silence, an answer is waiting. The answer may not come as words. It may come as a feeling, a shift, a gentle knowing. What matters is not speed, but sincerity. When you meet the void with openness, it responds with guidance. It softens from a heaviness into a whisper, from a barrier into a bridge. The stillness that once frightened you becomes a sanctuary. This is the practice of prajna in daily life. Not to erase the void, but to hear it. Not to run from silence, but to rest within it. And to let presence reveal its hidden treasures. So the next time you feel that quiet ache inside, do not rush to escape. Do not drown it in noise or numb it with distraction. Instead, pause. Place a hand on your heart and listen. Ask, what truth is this void asking me to hear? And trust that within the silence, an answer is waiting. The answer may not come as words. It may come as a feeling, a shift, a gentle knowing. What matters is not speed, but sincerity. When you meet the void with openness, it responds with guidance. It softens from a heaviness into a whisper, from a barrier into a bridge. The stillness that once frightened you becomes a sanctuary. This is the practice of prajna in daily life. Not to erase the void, but to hear it. Not to run from silence, but to rest within it. And to let presence reveal its hidden treasures.